Quick demo of this video tutorial. With this and last video, we complete mean stack user registration using Node.js, MongoDB and Angular 6. In this part 2, we create a beautiful front-end application for the previous Node.js API. Here we discuss points like how to design user registration form, how to implement client-side validation, how to consume Node.js API from Angular 6 application. So please watch till the end of this video tutorial. In the next video, we implement user authentication, login and logout using JWT authentication. Before starting this video, I would like to ask you a favor. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video. If you are new here, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob and click on the bell icon to get notification about my new videos. Most of the video lesson here also has a written blog post. You can find the link in video description. You can grab code from there as well. What's up YouTube? Welcome to .NET Mob. This is a continuation to the previous tutorial where we had a discussion on implementing server-side for mean stack user registration using Node.js and MongoDB. If you have not seen that video, then please watch that first, then continue with this part. In this video, we create a beautiful front-end client-side application in Angular 6 for the same mean stack user registration application. Here we have the same project from the previous part. In mean stack application, I used to organize source code into two separate folders, server-side and client-side. So for this Node.js application, I'm going to create a new folder here. I will name the folder as server. Then I will move all of these files into newly created folder server. So inside this server folder we have the Node.js application. Now we can start with client-side Angular application. For that, let me open command prompt here. So here we are inside the same folder project. Now we need to run the Angular CLI command ng new then application name. I will name this application as Angular 6. Hit enter. It will take some time to complete this process. It will create a new application. Along with that, it will install some default npm packages. So here we have successfully created an Angular application inside this Angular 6 folder. Before continuing with this Angular 6 application, I want to show you the structure of application that we need to create inside this part. For that, I will create a new text file. Here I will name this file as structure.txt. Inside, I will copy paste the structure of application. As you can see here, apart from this default app component, we have two additional components: parent component user, then child component signup. In future user authentication tutorial, under this parent user component, we will add one more child component, sign in. For now, we have only one child component, which is sign up. Now let's create these two components, user and sign up. In order to create the components, I want to open one more terminal from this Angular 6 folder. So right click on it, then open in command prompt, and you can use the Angular CLI command ng g4 generate c4 component. We need to create a component with name user. So type user, hit enter. New component can be seen inside this user folder here. Now let's create the child component sign up. Right click on this user folder, open in command prompt, then use the command ng g4 generate c4 component. Component name will be sign up, sign-up, hit enter. Newly created component can be seen inside this sign up folder here. Apart from these components, we need to add service and model class for user. For that, we need to create a shared folder inside the app folder. So I will create the folder shared here, then open one terminal from this folder. In order to create a service class, you can do this ng g4 generate s for service. Service class name will be user, so type user, hit enter. Now let's create the model class. In Angular CLI, there is no specific command to create a model class, even though we can create the model class with a little tweak in class creation command. So here it is, ng g4 generate, then class, we need to create a class, and class name will be user. Then we need to specify the command here. type of this file will be model. So type is equal to model, then hit enter. Inside this shared folder, you can see the newly created service and model class user.model.ts. Here we have the class user. As usual, inside this model class, we need to add properties related to user. So here it is. We have full name, email, and password. All of them are of the type string. In Node.js application, we had one more property which is salt secret. But inside this client-side application, we don't need to mess with secret codes here. Now let's discuss how to design user registration form inside this MeanStack application using Angular. Before that, I want to add some predefined CSS rules inside this application. For that, let me open default style sheet, which is styles.css. Inside this file, I will copy paste CSS rules which I have already prepared. Okay, that's it. Now we can design user registration form inside the signup component HTML file here. For that, I will use an object of this user model class inside the corresponding TypeScript file here. For that, we will start from service class itself. So first of all, I will add the import statement for model class here. Then I will declare a user model object and initialize here. So here we have the user object selected user, and it is initialized with empty full name, email, and password. Now we can inject this user service class inside the component TypeScript file here. So obviously I will add the import statement here. So I will add the providers array here. Providers, inside that we can add this service class here. Then I will define a parameter of this type user service inside this constructor here. So here it is, user service of the type user service class. In effect, we have created an object of model class inside this service class here, which is selected user here. Since we injected this user service class inside this component, we can access this property selected user from this component. So using that property, we are going to design user registration form inside the corresponding HTML file. So first of all, I have replaced default text with form element. Then I want to set local reference sign up form for this form element, which is equal to ng form. Inside this form, first of all, I will add a text box for full name. So here it is. We have the input element and it's of the type text. Then we will set the local reference full name is equal to ng model. After that, we have the two-way data binding using ng model. So here it is, user service. So this property is injected inside the corresponding TypeScript file here, user service. Inside that, we have a selected user property which is of the type model that you can see here. Okay, and inside that we have full name. Now let's add a name for this element. So here it is, name is equal to full name. After that, we have placeholder which is equal to full name. Like this full name, we want to add two text box for remaining email and password. For that, we can do this. Here we have the input element for email. After that, we have password also. We can see here we have the local reference email, and here we have binded two-way data binding with corresponding properties email and password. And here you can see the type of this text box for password, which is password itself, so that it will hide the original character with dot or asterisk mark based on the browser you are using. Now let's add a submit button for this form. Type of the button is submit, and here we have the value sign up. So in order to work this approach, we have to add forms module inside app module.ts file. So here is the file app module.ts. Inside that, first of all, I will add the import statement here. Then I will add this forms module class inside the imports array here. Now I have a suggestion. When application becomes bigger, this app module.ts file becomes messy. So it is always recommended to keep things clean and organized inside this app module.ts file. So I'm going to add required comments here. So under this section we have built-in imports, and inside the second group we have components import statements. Now let's configure routing inside this Angular application so that I can show you how this form looks like in actual web browser. As part of routing, I have replaced default text inside the default component HTML, app component HTML. I have replaced the default text with router outlet tag. Now I want to wrap this form element with few div elements. For that, I will use the parent component, which is user component. So we will use the user component HTML file, user component HTML. First of all, I will add a div with class wrapper. This wrapper class is already defined inside styles.css. Inside that, I will add another div with ID form content. Inside that, we need to show the exact sign up registration form. So first of all, I will add an h2 header saying sign up here. Below this h2 header, we can show whatever we have designed inside this sign up component HTML. For that, we will add the router outlet here. Now I want to show the registration form when user navigate into an URL /sign up. So let's look how we can do that. For that, I'm going to add a separate file inside this app folder. So here it is. I will name this file as routes.ts. First of all, inside this file, we need router class from Angular library. So here it is. We have imported routes class from Angular router. After that, I will add the import statement for user component and sign up component. So here it is. After that, we have a constant app routes. It's of the type routes class that we have already imported here. It's basically an array. Inside this array, we can have as much as objects based on the number of routes we need. So first of all, I will add an object for this sign up route. Okay, so here we have the path sign up, and when user navigate into this path, first of all, we will load the parent component, which is user component. So here we have the children array. Inside the array, we will add an object like this. Path is equal to empty and component is equal to sign up component. So when user navigate into this sign up path, the parent component, user component, will be loaded into this first router outlet inside the default app component HTML. And inside this user component HTML, we have another router outlet where we load the children HTML, which is sign up component HTML. Here we have the children component specified as sign up component. So with this routes.ts file, we have configured routing for this application. Now we need to tell the application we have a separate file in order to configure routing for this application. That we can do inside app-module.ts file. So first of all, we will import the constant that we have exported here, app routes. For that, we can do this, import app routes from routes.ts file. Now we need the help of router module class from the library. So here we have the import statement for router module. Then we can do this inside this imports array here. We just need to do this router module dot for route. Inside that, we can pass the app routes constant. Okay, all set. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Back to the application here. Here we have nothing because we are inside the default route. Now let me navigate into sign up path here. Boom. Here we have the user registration form that we have designed inside sign up component HTML. For now, we have only one user registration form. So I want to show this same user registration form inside the default route also, because it is better to show something than nothing. Currently we have nothing inside the default route. So let's look how we can configure default route also. Then we can add one more route for default route. So here it is, we have path as empty string. When user navigate into default route, he will be redirected to sign up path where we show the user registration form, and here we have the path match as full. Now let me save this. Back to the application here. So if you navigate into the default route, you can see the same user registration form. Okay. So here we successfully added routing for this user registration form. Now we have to implement client-side validation. Some of you may have the doubt, why do we need validation on client side and server side? Client side validation will give the correctness of data at the real time without reaching up to server side. For a hacker, it is easy to bypass client side validation. In that case, server side validation will secure the data. So I hope you have understood the need of validation on both ends. Now I'm going to add validations for full name, email and password. So back to VS Code editor, then open sign up component HTML. First of all, I will add the required validation for this full name text box. Required, that means when we submit this form using this submit button here, there should be some text inside this full name text box. Otherwise, we will show the indication with a red border. For that, we can add the CSS class here. So here is the ng class directory. Inside that, we have the CSS class invalid text box. This class is already defined inside styles.css. This class will be applied to this text box when this sign up form is submitted and full name is not valid. That means this text box is still empty. Now let me save this and back to the application here. I'm going to submit this form without entering data inside this text box. So here you can see the red bottom border indication. If you want to show a validation error message, you can do that as well. So for that, we will add an extra div here. This div will be displayed when this expression becomes true. This is the same expression that we have used here also. Inside that, we have the message, this field is required. Now let me save this. Back to the application. Let's do the same. Submit this form without entering full name. So here we have the message, this field is required. Now let's add validation for remaining controls also. So here we have the email text box. For this email text box, we have to add two types of validation. First of all, it should be required, and then it should be in a proper email format. In order to implement this email pattern validation, we will use the same regular expression that we have used in our Node.js API. For that, let me add one extra property here. So here is the property. Inside that, we have the regular expression to check the correctness of email inside email text box. Then we need to add the pattern directory by specifying the property email regular expression. Here also we will apply the CSS class invalid text box when this control becomes invalid. So here is the directive ng class. Inside that we have the expression for email. Now we have to add an extra div for validation error message. So here it is. This div will be displayed whenever this form is submitted and there is an error inside this email text box. Okay. Inside that we have the first label. This label will be displayed whenever this email has an error which is of the type required validation. Then we will show this message, this field is required. If it is related to pattern, then we will show this invalid email address message. Same as that of email text box, we have two validation for this password text box also. So first of all, we have min length, it should be 4 characters at least, and here we have the required validation. If there is any client-side validation related to this text box, this class will be applied invalid text box based on this condition here. Okay. Now we have to add the extra div to show the corresponding validation error messages. So here is the extra div. This div will be displayed whenever we have an error related to password text box. Here we have the required validation error label, and here we have the mil length validation error message. Now let me try to submit this form without entering any field data. Click on submit. So here we have the complete error message. Now let's try to fill them one by one. First of all, we have full name, so we don't have any error related to full name. Now you can see the validation error message related to email. This field is required. Now if I start filling this text box, you can see the change of error message, invalid email address. If I complete this with a correct email, it should be disappeared. Currently we have this error. This field is required. If I enter something inside this, enter at least 4 characters. Now let's add few more characters here. So all of these form controls becomes valid. Now it's time to submit this form to server-side Node.js API. So back to VS Code editor. For this user registration form, let's add a submit event. For that, here we have the ng submit, and inside that we have called the function on submit, and we have passed the local reference of this form, sign up form here. Before that, you can see this condition, sign up form valid. So before calling this function, in order to execute this event, this form as a whole should be valid. Then only this function will be called. Now we have to define this function on submit inside this corresponding TypeScript file here. So here we need to define the function on submit. For this function, we have a single parameter form. It's of the type ng form. Now we have to add the import statement for this ng form class here. Import ng form from Angular forms. From this onSubmit function, we have to consume Node.js API by passing details of new user like we have done in Postman. To consume the Node.js API, we will use the service class, which is user service class here. For that, first of all, we will use the HTTP from the Angular library. So here we have the corresponding import. We have imported HTTP client and HTTP header from Angular common HTTP. Now in order to work with HTTP client, we have to create a parameter of this HTTP client inside the corresponding constructor here. So here it is, HTTP, it's of the type HTTP client class. In order to work with HTTP client here, we have to add corresponding module inside app-module.ts file here. So here we have to import HTTP client module, and we have to add this class inside this imports array here. Now back to the service class. Now let's create a function post user with a single parameter user. It's of the type user model class. Inside the function, we can make a post request to the Node.js API. For that, we just need to do this dot http dot post function can be called. Inside that, first of all, we have to pass the URL. As a second parameter, we have to pass details of new user that we can pass using this user parameter here, user. This post request must reach up to the register function inside the Node.js API that you can see here. Here we have the Node.js application that we have implemented in previous tutorial. Here we have the user controller. Inside that we have the register function, which is responsible for adding new user into MongoDB. In order to call this register function, we have to make a call to this route here, register. And here we have specified the prefix for the route API. So in order to make the request, we have to make a request like this, /API /register. Okay. So back to the user service class here. Here for this post function, as a first parameter, we have to pass the corresponding post URI, which means /API /register. Before that, we have the base domain. In this case, we have localhost 3000 because we are running this Node.js API at port number 3000. So in order to save this base URL, we can use environment.ts file from this Angular application that you can see here. Inside this environments folder, we have environment.ts file. So here it is, API base URL. In previous Node.js API, we have configured application parameters with config.json and config.js file. Here we have the environment.ts file. Inside that we have API base URL. Now let me save this, then back to user service class. Now we have to import this exported constant environment inside this service file here. So here we have the import statement for the constant. Now in order to access values stored inside this API base URL property, we just need to do this environment.API base URL. Inside that we have the localhost port number /API. Into this base URL we have to append the /register. So that we can do here /register. Now let me save this, then back to the signup component TypeScript file here. Now from this onSubmit function, we can call this user service class function post user by passing form data. So let's look how we can do that. We have already injected user service class here, so we can make use of this user service object. So here it is, this dot user service dot post user. Into this function we have to pass single parameter value, which is user. So in order to pass values of new user from this form, we can do this. Here we have the form object, form dot value will give the details of new user from these controls here. Okay, so this post user function actually returns an observable. So inside this function we have to add the return statement here. So this function will return an observable. Okay, and we can subscribe to that observable inside this function here. So we just need to call the subscribe function here, subscribe. Inside that we can add two functions. Okay, so first of all we have the success function, success arrow function. As a second parameter we have the function for error. If everything goes well, then this function will be called. If there is something wrong, this function will be called. First of all, let's deal with success arrow function. When this user registration becomes successful, I want to show a div showing success message below this user registration form. In order to hide and show the div, I want to add one extra property here. So here is the property show success message. It's of the type boolean. So inside this function we can do this. First of all, I will set this boolean property, this dot show success message is equal to true. Now let's add the corresponding success div below this form element here. So here it is, we have the div, it has a success clause, and here we have the ngIf directive, so that this div will be displayed only when this boolean property becomes true. At the same time, we only want to show this div for a certain period of time. So in order to hide this div after a certain period of time, we can use the set timeout function. So here it is. Here we call the set timeout function. Inside that we have a arrow function without any parameter. Inside the function we have set this property show success message is equal to false, and here we have the duration in millisecond. So this function, this arrow function will be called after 4 seconds. So this div will be displayed only for 4 seconds. Now let's look what we can do when something went wrong at server side. In order to store error messages, I'm going to create a new property here, server error messages. It's of the type string. Now inside this arrow function we can do this. If the status of response is equal to 4200, then we can say that error occurred due to validation. And you can see inside this Node.js API we have done that. Here inside this user controller we have set 4200 for duplicate email address, and inside this app.js we have set 4200 for all validation errors. So inside this Angular application, if it is equal to 4200, we will consider it as a validation error. So in that case, we will store all the validation error messages inside this string server error messages. So in client side, we have joined all of these validation error messages with a line break here. Now there can be errors in server side rather than this validation, so that we can deal inside this else clause here. We will set the error message as something went wrong, please contact admin. Now along with this success div, we want to add one more div for error messages. We will show this div when we have something inside this error messages property, and it will be displayed using the string interpolation from Angular. Now we have to do one more thing. When user registration is successful, we want to reset these form controls to their initial state. For that, I'm going to add a new function here. So here is the function reset form with single parameter form. It's of the type ng form. Inside the function, first of all, we have reset the user model class object selected user with empty string. After that, we have called the reset form function from the form object. Finally, we will reset the error messages with empty string. Now let's call this reset form function inside this success arrow function. So here it is. Now let me save all of these modifications here. Then back to the application. Now let me add a new user. Before that, you have to make sure the running status of MongoDB server, Node.js API and Angular application. Now click on submit. So here we have the success message saved successfully. Now let me check the MongoDB here. I have already deleted all records from previous tutorial. Now click on this refresh button here in order to see the newly inserted record. Gina Frost, and here we have the email, encrypted password, corresponding salt secret. We have already tested validations inside this application. Now let's check the duplicate email address. In server-side Mongoose model, we have added unique constraint for the email address. Now let's check that inside this form. For that, I'm going to add a new user, Gina Thor. I'm going to use the same email address from here. Let me copy this, then paste here. Let me add a random password. Click on submit. So here we have the error message, duplicate email address found. Now let's make this email unique. For that, let me add few more characters here. Then click on submit. So here we have successfully saved Gina Thor. Click on this refresh button. So here we have the new record for Gina Thor. In the next video, we will discuss user authentication in mean stack with login and logout using JWT authentication. You can download this project source code from the GitHub link given below in video description. Along with that, you can see a text article for this same topic. If you found this video helpful, please thumbs up this video, and for more awesome videos like this, please be subscribed to this channel .NET Mob. And don't forget to like and share this video with your friends and colleagues so that they can benefit from this. Have a nice day. Bye.